Hello and welcome to Mullen's Benefits Companion, a podcast that helps employers navigate the complex legal challenges of managing their employee benefit plans. I'm your host, Brydon Dewitt, and today I'll be joined by Pollock, a paralegal in our employee benefits practice group here at Mullen. How are you today, Claire?
Great. Thanks, Brydon. It's good to be here.
Thanks for being here. In this episode, I thought we would explore what it means to be an ERISA plan, especially with respect to voluntary benefits.
Well, yes, we've been seeing more and more clients offering voluntary benefits through insurance carriers like Unum and Aflac. The voluntary benefits could be accident coverage or critical illness, life insurance or additional life insurance, hospital coverage or disability insurance. Are these types of coverage subject to ERISA?
They can be, although employers often do not consider these types of Aflac arrangements to be ERISA plans. They do provide benefits that under the regulations are welfare benefits subject to ERISA. But the Department of Labor regulations exempt from ERISA coverage these types of insurance policies where certain conditions are satisfied. So specifically, if the employer makes no contributions to the arrangement, doesn't pay any of the premiums, if employee participation is completely voluntary, if the employer does not endorse the policy, and if the employer doesn't receive any compensation in connection with offering the arrangement or having the arrangement offered to employees, if those four elements are satisfied, then under Department of Labor regulations, the voluntary benefit is not subject to ERISA.
Okay, so looking at voluntary arrangements that are subject to ERISA, what does it mean for an employer to, quote, endorse the policy? I know some employers will deduct premiums through payroll deduction. Does a premium deduction make the employer endorse the policy?
No, it is permissible for employers to payroll deduct the premium. It's permissible for an employer to allow the insurance carrier to put materials in the break room, or to have a representative come to the workplace and explain the arrangements to employees. But the key is whether the employer has crossed the line into endorsing the policy and treating these voluntary benefits as part of the employer's offering of employee benefits to employees. And that's really a gray area. It's really facts and circumstances. The regulations don't tell us exactly what an employer does that causes the arrangement to be endorsed. But if an employer negotiates the premiums, or if the employer includes a description of the voluntary benefits along with a description of its regular group health, life, disability benefits, includes the materials in those communications, if it sends an email to employees encouraging them to enroll and say there's a representative from XYZ insurance company and they have really great, cancer insurance benefits that we hope everybody enrolls in. If you're really advocating for the voluntary benefit, then the employer arguably is crossing the line into actually endorsing the policy and making what otherwise is thought of as a non-ERISA, non-employer plan into an ERISA plan that the employer is responsible for. There's an interesting case out of the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of California that was decided just last year, where the employer was deemed to have endorsed what was otherwise a voluntary long-term disability insurance policy. But there, the employer initiated the contact with the insurer, contacted the insurance company, and negotiated the premiums that the insurance company would charge. The employer signed an application for the insurance stating that the employer would identify which employees could be offered the coverage, and even offered to pay a portion of the premium for the employees. So that's violating also that requirement that the employer doesn't contribute to the policy. And then the employer agreed to send a letter to employees recommending the long-term disability policy to the employees. And so the court looked at those factors and concluded that the employer had endorsed the policy and converted the voluntary insurance into an ERISA plan, an employer-sponsored ERISA plan that employer is responsible for.
So what is the consequence of a voluntary benefit being an ERISA plan?
Well, if you have an ERISA plan, then all of the ERISA disclosure and reporting requirements apply. So the plan, ERISA requires you to have a plan document. You have to have a summary plan description. If there are any amendments to the plan, you have to have a summary of material modifications. And really the requirement that really is the most significant here is that the plan is subject to the Form 5500 reporting requirements. And if an employer doesn't file a Form 5500, there are pretty significant daily penalties that can apply if an employer fails to file a Form 5500. And if an employer discovers that they have had an ERISA plan for many years, you've got a long, many multiple Form 5500s filings that were missed.
So can you explain the process if an employer discovers that one of its voluntary benefits is an ERISA plan and has not been reporting it on a 5500?
Yeah, well, fortunately, the Department of Labor has a program for late 5500s. It's called the Delinquent Filer Voluntary Compliance Program. And under the DFVCP, under the DFVCP, the penalty is reduced to $10 per day and then capped. So for small plans, those are plans that have fewer than 100 participants at the beginning of the plan year, the penalty is capped at $750. And for plans with 100 or more participants at the beginning of the plan year, the penalty is capped at $2,000. That is significant relief, especially if you're going back multiple years. The per day penalties would rack up and be a lot higher than $750 or $2,000 per Form 5500.
So it really is worth fessing up when you discover that you have this ERISA plan.
Right. It's often the case, with employee benefits compliance, whether it's a qualified plan or it's a health and welfare issue, there are programs where you can correct, and it's a lot better than sweeping it under the rug and hoping for the best.
Correct.
So to enroll in the, if you discover that your voluntary benefits were actually ERISA plans, then it's pretty easy to take advantage of the DFVCP. The first step is to complete your Form 5500s and file them for the prior years. And you want to make sure that you check the box. There's a DFVCP program box on Part 1 of the Form 5500, and you want to make sure you check that box to let make it clear that this is a DFVCP filing, and then electronically file the Form 5500 as you normally would, and then electronically submit the penalty amount. And there's an online calculator at the Dewitt. There's a DFVCP calculator, and we'll provide in our podcast webpage or on the employee benefits webpage the address to the DFVCP calculator. So you calculate your penalty there, and then you can pay online. Alternatively, there's a regular address that you can send it by mail, but it's really easy if you do it electronically. So the steps are to complete your Form 5500 and check the box, and to calculate your penalty and file it electronically.
Now, if an employer discovers that it has multiple voluntary benefits that are ERISA plans, you have to do it's likely that you'll have to do a separate DFVCP filing for each type of voluntary benefit that was not previously filed.
Right, it's likely. And there are some factors to look at, but likely the employer would have multiple Form 5500s for multiple arrangements if they are all distinct, separate plans, once it's determined that they are ERISA plans.
What else should an employer do if it discovers that its voluntary benefits are ERISA plans, other than the 5500, correcting the 5500 filing?
Right, so going forward, if the employer really wants these arrangements to be voluntary, non-ERISA plans, then stop doing the things that cause it to be an ERISA plan, right? Stop with the emails saying there's a great, long-term disability policy that we are offering, and there's somebody in the break room, there's material in the break room, go sign up. So stop doing the things that cause it to be an endorsed ERISA plan, and make sure that you're not paying any portion of the premiums. Just go through those 4 criteria that we mentioned and make sure that going forward that the arrangements are no longer ERISA plans, and make that clear to employees. In communications, if you send an email saying, an insurance broker is going to be talking to us this morning about this have a disclaimer in the email that says, but these are not, these arrangements are not benefit plans sponsored by us, by the employer. Make it clear that these are voluntary benefits that are not subject to ERISA.
That seems like good practical advice.
Yeah, I mean, any time that you're communicating these arrangements, there should be a statement stating that it's not subject to ERISA. On the other hand, if the employer says, we kind of like ERISA, we like some of the protections that, is
It's
possible, then make sure you have a plan document. Make sure there's a summary plan description that meets all the requirements and the regulations for SPDs, and make sure that you're filing Form 5500s going forward. So that'll wrap up our discussion of what it takes to be an ERISA plan. I'd like to thank Claire for joining me on the Benefits Companion. If you have any questions or suggestions for future episodes, please contact me at bdewitt@williamsmullen.com. You can also visit our employee benefits practice page at williamsmullen.com/employee benefits. There you can find out more about our team as well as past episodes of this podcast and legal alerts. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to be notified when our next episode posts. Thanks for listening.